There's sort of the art quilters, traditional quilters, and modern quilters. I like to just say I'm a quilter because I tend to make all of those things. Every time I'm making a quilt, I'm trying to make a quilt that you wouldn't necessarily say that I made. I want it to look different than the last thing. I don't always know that I achieved that, but it's a goal that I'm always looking for when I'm making a quilt. My name is Victoria Findlay Wolf, and we are here in New York City. Living in New York City in the Garment Center certainly gives me access to many different kinds of fabrics. So whether I'm using linen or upholstery fabrics, I've used vinyls in my quilts. I'm not a fabric snob, I buy it all. Depends on what story it is I'm telling and what fabric is gonna best tell that story. All of my quilts are actually designed on a wall, not on paper, not on the computer. Doing everything on a design wall, very much the way that I would push paint around on a canvas. My design walls are quilt batting. Everything sticks to it really nicely so that I can pick stuff up and put it right back up there, and I don't have to pin everything. If I decide I don't want that red there, I can peel it off and put a different color right back up onto my design wall. But for the moment, I really like that red there, so it's gonna stay. I'll grab a pile of fabric that looks interesting or a color palette that looks interesting, and I will just try to make it work. I always call my quilts improvisational. I really have no idea what it's gonna look like ahead of time. This is when I'm playing. This is the part of the process that once I get those goosebumps, then I'll know I'm on the right track. I probably go through 1,000 photos per quilt. My brain's going, oh, I know what we're doing. We're doing a double wedding ring. But as soon as I step back and I take a picture of something, I'll see where colors are making a connection or a line continues, you know, how I'm stretching what's happening here to get all the way across the quilt. I'm keeping the bones of a traditional pattern, but really just trying to tell a different story. Because this is not a traditional double wedding ring, it doesn't follow a certain path, I literally have to take each of the units off the wall as I'm going to sew them and put them right back. Because especially if I've got 1,000 photos, I'll get totally lost. I'm not committed to anything until I sew it. Ultimately, once the whole quilt top is complete, it's still fair game. I could still cut it apart and turn it into something else. Because it's just because it's a double wedding ring doesn't mean it has to stay a double wedding ring. This quilt, it's definitely revisiting my first double wedding ring quilt, which was Double Edged Love. The Double Edged Love quilt happened because I had made a quilt top and then didn't like the quilt top, and I cut the whole quilt top up and then put everything on my design wall, and what I was struck with was the negative space that was happening. I went to art school as a painter and have a fine art degree background. I did make some quilts when I was in college. After the first one that I made, one of my teachers kind of pulled me out into the hallway and said, you know, is that craft? Is that art? Does it belong in art school? So I went and I made another one, because why wouldn't I, right? It became this big discussion about whether textiles had a place in art school. I didn't see the difference. I figure if I'm putting something together and making it, I see that as art.
Hi, how are you doing today?
What I'm known for is making quilts that look really hard and then being able to teach them and show quilters that they're actually not that hard.
So you sew it together in diagonals?
I design patterns and templates. I also design the fabrics. And I love going around talking about quilts and hopefully giving some inspiration so that people can make their own story, because I think that's what's really special about quilt making, is telling stories. This quilt was made by my grandmother, Elda Wolf. My mom and her sisters would cut apart all those polyester clothes from the 70s and put them in a bag. And she would take those pieces out and she would lay those on the sheet in front of her and work her way from the inside to the outside, just puzzling those pieces of fabric and then hand stitching those down. The best part about a quilt like that, though, is that I can recognize most of those fabrics. You know, you make the same shirt for everybody in the family, including the daughter. Mine got a ruffle on it. That was about as good as it got. Yeah, there's many a photo of all of us standing there at Christmas time with all of our matching shirts on. I grew up in central Minnesota. Everybody around me was stitching at some point. My father had an upholstery business on the farm. My mother was sewing winter clothes and stuff. The best part, though, I think, was sleeping under my grandmother's quilts because she was the one who was a quilter. We didn't have heat or telephones, and I like to tell people that that was the 70s, not the 1870s. We would be very happy to be sleeping under my grandmother's double knit polyester quilts because when it's 40 below in Minnesota, you can still sweat under some double knit polyester. My grandmother's quilts are loosely based on a crazy quilt concept. She would always be working on these things flat, and she didn't really have a clear visual of what they would look like when they're finished, but it kind of doesn't matter because the colors are so vibrant and fantastic. I even noticed here, she actually fussy cut a little flower and stitched it right on top of that yellow. I bet there's a hole in that yellow underneath there somewhere. You make it work. That's what I like about these quilts. Prior to having a child, I would spend 12 hours a day working away, but when you have a baby, I'd only get maybe 15 minutes for myself, and I would go to my sewing machine and I'd start sewing scraps together very much to look like my grandmother's quilts, because that was what I was aware of. And that set me on this whole journey of sort of reconnecting with my roots, and I think that's what a lot of my work is about. Focusing that attention on my traditional background and the tradition of quilts and telling that story through the more modern version or art version of quilts that I'm making now. This is a long arm quilting machine. What we're doing with this is we're pulling the machine across the quilt and doing the quilting. On a home machine, you would be moving the quilt underneath the needle, but this time I'm driving the machine with the needle over the quilt. There's also a computer system, so I can do special designs if I want to, or I can do it free motion just by driving the machine and making it stitch wherever I want it to. This particular piece is actually an exhibit quilt of mine, so meaning I would have pieced everything, quilted everything, so this is why this quilt is on my frame and I'll be doing this one myself. Most of my early quilts are done on the home machine, which is where I'm the most comfortable, so it pays to have a best friend who's a long armer. We thought you might want to see the back of this quilt. I don't quilt all of my quilts anymore myself. My best friend, Shelley Pollyi, is a long arm quilter, and we do a lot of collaboration work together. So we have big conversations about what's going to go on the quilts, and sometimes not at all. I know the quilting on this one's fabulous, right? Creativity involves risk, so if you don't take that risk, it's hard to find something new. There's the goosebumps again. That's the thing that I'm looking for. I call quilting an extreme sport. People jump off a cliff because they get a rush. I kind of get a physical rush when I'm creating something. If I'm not getting that, then I keep looking for it, and I'll keep going until I get that.